next up, we got a couple things related to regulations and laws. And
Yeah.
these are U.S. regulations and laws, but as we know, as goes U.S., so often does go the rest of the world. So, um,
Yeah. And I
let's take
like
a
to put
look.
these near the end of the news because a lot of people don't care about this stuff and it can be a bit of a downer. But
Yeah.
the first one is actually possibly important. Um, and this could directly affect us in a way nothing else has, but we don't know if it will get passed. So this is called the Drones for First Responders Act. And if you don't care
Wait,
about this at all,
wait.
in the future,
Let me interrupt you. Is Elise Stefanik, is that the same person doing the Countering CCP Drones Act?
that is correct.
Okay, so this lady just hates drones. Got it. Continue.
That is correct.
Okay.
Um, almost as much as she hates China. Um,
China.
so
Excuse me, I had something in my
basically,
throat.
here's the skinny on this. The Drones for First Responders Act is set up to say that essentially foreign drones, like those from China, will be subject to a tariff on purchase. Every single drone you purchase, manufactured by China. Okay, it starts at 30% the first year. So that means any DJI drone you bought, as soon as this was enacted, the first year you would pay 30% extra on top of that as a tariff to the US government. Okay. Then
Okay.
every year after that, it would go up by 5%, ending at 50%. And then the year after that, it would be 50% plus $100 on top of each purchase you made from them. And then after that, in 2030, it would become illegal and they would
Wait,
ban the
wait, wait,
purchase of these drones.
wait a second though. This says no drones may enter the United States if they contain flight controller, radio, etc., manufactured in the People's Republic of China.
On
Does
January
this
1st, 2030, it bans
specifically
all drones,
not
including our
just for
parts.
first responders?
No. This has nothing to do with first responders. That's the problem with this act. This act is every
Oh,
single person. This act is everyone in the
oh,
entire United
it has
States.
nothing to do with first responders. It adds
No,
tariffs to. Okay, so here I'm thinking, well, okay, but I'm not a first responder, so I guess it's okay.
no.
I mean,
Every
not
single
it's
person in
not
the entire
okay.
United States, including first responders. So get this. Okay, here's the dumb part. Okay, a lot of first responders are using these foreign drones, right? So they would also be
Yeah.
subject to the tariffs. Okay, so then that tariff money will get put into a big fund,
Oh my
and
God. Oh my
and
God.
that fund of money will be
Oh
made
my God.
available to first responders, farmers and ranchers, and critical infrastructure grants.
Oh my God. So the idea, so basically, every single consumer in the United States who buys a drone made in China or with any parts made in China would pay this tariff so that our first responders can buy domestic drones to replace the Chinese drones that they already have that already work pretty well for them.
Correct.
So, and because
And
it's
they're
first responders, if I'm like, F that, then I'm the asshole. Because,
That's exactly
hey,
correct.
what do you mean? You don't like first responders? Wow, this guy loves China and hates first responders. Whoa. Oh, could put him on the blacklist. Nice try, Stefanik.
That's exactly the plan here. This has not been introduced yet. We don't have the gov track on this, but as far as we know, it will have bipartisan support, similar to the Countering CCP Drones Act. So there is some
Wow.
concern that this will pass. And if that is the case, then unless this is reversed by 2030, it will be illegal to purchase any Chinese drone parts in the United States of America
At all.
at all. And the first year will be a 30% tariff on every single part purchase that kind of goes under any, like other than the frame, essentially.
So, like, for example, this would be applied at the importing. So, like, Get FPV or Race Day Quads would be paying a 30% tariff to import the parts.
Correct.
And then, of course, passing that on to consumers who, as we know, are incredibly willing to pay more for parts. Like, we're already
Yeah.
getting hit because prices of things have doubled roughly. Flight controllers and ESCs have roughly doubled since 2020-ish, maybe 2021. Everything is more expensive. Just about the only thing that hasn't doubled in price is motors, strangely. Maybe frames, so they've gone up, but not like quite as much. And yeah. So now we're just going to tag 30% on top of that.
Yeah,
so
the
that
first year,
first
and then 35,
responders.
and then 40, and then 45. I mean, it's just insane. And then literally the year before they're banned, it would cost you, for a flight controller, it would cost you 50% extra plus $100 for the flight
Oh my
controller.
God! It's that $100 is per component, not
Per
just for the
component.
whole drone.
Yeah,
So
they
like,
really don't want you to buy it.
I buy a $60 flight controller. It costs me $100 plus 50%. Plus 30,
Yes.
it costs me $130 extra dollars,
Yes.
which is like a complete deal breaker.
You know, my opinion here, okay, all opinion, but like this seems clearly to be, we cannot make something cheap enough to compete or good enough to compete in the United States. So the only way we can do that is shut out the entire the entire group of people who can do that correctly and who can beat us. So then there isn't any competition. And then we'll also, that money is going to end up going to first responders and people to purchase drones from these companies. So it's essentially
Yeah.
a way to funnel
Right.
everyone's money without doing it with taxpayer money. That's the
Right,
idea.
because that's the thing. This is like a handout for
Yes.
domestic drone manufacturers in a way, because the
Yes.
first responders will get the money, and then the first responders will ostensibly spend the money on U.S. made drones, and so it is. It's a kickback to U.S. It's a what is it? That's tax break. What's it called? Where the government gives money to support something and encourage something.
It's kind
It's
of a bailout, but are you talking about a subsidy?
Bailout. Subsidy. There you go. That's the word. This is basically a backdoor subsidy for U.S. drone manufacturers.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas if she said, we're going to raise the price of Chinese drones and give the money to U.S. drone manufacturers, I don't know about that. Oh, but first responders, I mean, who could say no to first responders? Next, you're going to tell me you don't want to give the money to puppies so they can buy drones, you know? This is a real problem. Like, this is just
and I think the real concern here is the way it's pitched. I think it's going to have bipartisan support, and I think it's going to go through at least quite a ways because it has the backing of saying we're going to support first responders and farmers, and like everybody who sees it and doesn't understand it will think it's good, you know?
Well, here's the other thing, Blundia, and I hate to say this, but I think that there's a lot of people in high places in the U.S. government who are antagonistic to China, who think that China is antagonistic to us, and to some degree that's true. Like the U.S. and China have always had I think in some ways a very close relationship, in terms of we give them money and they make stuff for us and we buy it, but also kind of an antagonistic relationship to a degree. But I think that for whatever reason there are people who see that coming to a head, and I think that the idea of, hey, yeah, we're really going to show them, we're going to cut them off from our market. Yeah, screw China. I think that there are people who think that that's a good outcome, independent of everything else. They're just the spying, the information security risks, all that stuff. It's just like they just want to give a middle finger to China, and they think this is a good way to do it. That's what concerns me.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way that the market can tolerate this increase in price, even if, as Pacific Source says, it's likely to be bypassable except on the flight controllers. Okay, well, let's say it's just the flight controller. Now your whole drone, 50% more plus $100.
I think the biggest problem is like bind and flies are never going to get around this, right? Like, I mean, if you try to, like, it's very clear how you're going to try to cheat on a bind and fly, and this whole thing is pointed at things like a bind and fly, right? Like, so, but I don't know, individual parts maybe, but is every company going to continue to produce all these parts when they can't sell bind and flies out of their own company like they always have done to support the parts manufacturer? Like, are we still going to see all these producers produce the quantity they have? Is the price going to be able to stay as low because the quantity's not up?
There's no way.
There's so many variables that happen in this when you change a market that, like, I agree it could maybe happen, but like, what does it look like on the other side? Who knows, right?
Well, here's what we need to see between now and, well, I guess 2030 is the cutoff. But we really need to see more, and this is true regardless of any political implications. Like, this is not a political podcast, and I'm not here to take a stance on, the political relationship between the U.S. and China. But I think that there are many reasons why it would be good if there were more domestic and European manufacturers of drone parts. Like, for example, I see Dominic Clifton popping up in the chat. He makes SP Racing flight controllers in Europe. There's Orca, who manufactures out of Croatia. Now, they don't do a lot of hobby stuff these days, but they do exist. And like, I've heard other rumblings of companies going, what could we do if we didn't manufacture in China? And maybe some of that is they just see the way this is going. If there is a hope for FPV in the future, maybe, well, the hope would be that these stupid bills get thrown out, but I don't know if we can count on that. The next hope would be that we see such an increase in manufacturing in places that aren't China that, you can still go. It seems like the price has got to go up, and then what? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Hopefully this doesn't go through, but it could.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope not. Thank you for letting us know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got one more piece of news in the law spectrum. So we've heard about previously the Department of Commerce entity list. We reported on it when DJI got added back in the day, and we know that you might remember that this is the one that doesn't really affect anything. It just puts them on a list of bad people to the government or whatever, to commerce, but it doesn't actually change anything in effect. But Tmotor has been added to this, likely for their participation in parts for the war. But yeah, they have been added to the Department of Commerce entity list. And so now technically, if you have dealings with Tmotor, you'll be added to a flagged list with the U.S. government. And in practice, though, we saw all the manufacturers all the companies continue to purchase DJI drones when they got banned and sell them like they were normal. So I expect we'll see, this happened in April. So I expect we'll see a similar thing with this.
When this story first came down, I thought that it meant that Tmotor couldn't be imported. But I don't think that's correct. I think that as I understand it, the entities list pertains to exporting knowledge and parts and other stuff to Tmotor, which I think most people aren't doing. Although I guess, in theory, if you wanted to hire Tmotor to OEM a novel motor design for you, maybe that would fall under this. But if you're just a customer of Tmotor's, I don't think this really affects you at all.
Yeah, I think the restrictions are only on dealings the company has outwardly with Tmotor, but I think any company doing anything with an entity on the list gets flagged by the U.S. government. Is how it works, and then they can use that right to audit your books to find out if you're doing anything nefarious. I think that's the idea.
So, for example, Get FPV buys motors from Tmotor. Now the government goes, "Hey, look."
They would then have the right to come in and say, "Let's see your books and make sure you're not doing anything nefarious." Yeah.
Okay.
But again, I don't think that turned any companies away from dealing with DJI. So.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. It's a crazy world. Blunty. The world is getting more and more crazy.
It is. Hopefully we see the CCP drones get shot down, but I don't know. And hopefully we see the drones for first responders that get shot down. But again, I don't know how that's going to shake out. I think it's much less... we've seen these previous rules in the last few years, and they all got shut down, and they didn't have a lot of chance of going through. And now the Stefanik's in, she's getting bipartisan support and pitching things like she is. I think we're in a world where these things could happen. So,
yeah, I'll tell you, if there is one lost dog that doesn't get rescued because the owner didn't have the drone that they needed to search for that dog, that's one dog too many. That is unconscionable. Speaking of dogs.
That's all part of it.
Oh, that's right. If he ever got lost, we'd be out there trying to find him with a drone.
100%. I'd be calling everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to send Stefanik videos of dogs being rescued by drones.
We need to put those in Congress.
Yeah. Somebody needs to get a sausage on a drone, on a string, and fly it over Congress. And all the Congress people could, maybe they're just hungry. Okay.